Even with Kafka's rework, DOT although more playable is still quite far from being more meta relevant, and with Hysilens release, that may just all change. In this video, I'll be going over Hysilens Kit, how strong she actually is, how to use her properly, builds like Hysilens Teams, Eidolons, and so on. Firstly, Hysilens Kit. It's quite simple actually, she just provides a ton of DOTs. Due to her talent, Hysilens has a 100% base chance to inflict wind shear, bleed, shock, or burn to the enemy whenever an ally attacks, with each DOT dealing 25% of her attack. By the way, wind shear can stack up to 5 times, so if stacked to full, should be 200% attack in total. But because the DOTs are from different elements, if you have a physical damage op for example, the DOTs don't actually receive the damage boost and is also affected by the enemy's resistance. Hence in reality, will always be lower than a single 200% physical DOT. That sounds pretty bad, right? Well, it's because it's just a stepping stone to her ultimate. Hysilens deploys a zone that reduces enemy's defense by 25% and attack by 15%. But the juicy part is whenever an enemy takes one instance of DOT, Hysilens will additionally deal 80% physical DOT up to 8 times. This is responsible for the majority of the damage and rewards you for more DOTs you have applied on the enemy. The rest of the kit helps her to function smoothly as a character, extra damage boost based on effective rate just like Black Swan, because effective rate is a garbage mechanic, automatic zone from her ultimate at the start of the battle, and she also recovers a skill point whenever she deploys the zone, giving more skill points to the team. She even has her own DOT detonation when using her ultimate at 150% of the original damage, and is actually higher than Kafka's 120%. Finally, her skill applies 20% vulnerability in addition to a little bit more damage. Overall, like I said, Hysilens Kit just wants to apply a ton of DOTs and constantly detonate them. She doesn't really revolutionize DOT, but rather is just a strong, solid unit in the niche. And hence is why she still suffers from the downsides DOT has. I touched on it a little bit in my Kafka rework video, but just to refresh, DOT loses a multiplier for free as compared to traditional crit damage, meaning they require higher multipliers to compete with other types of damage on top of being oversaturated faster. Debuffs are horrible to use in Star Rail because unlike Harmony buffs, it can be removed when the boss changes phases, and obviously new enemies entering the battle will not have DOTs automatically applied. On top of these mechanics, you require effective rate to even be able to apply the debuff or DOT, which is why nowadays we're getting buffs like 100% attack if you have 75% effective rate and so on. Hysilens Kit does not improve any of this, but rather just has a much higher and more consistent DOT multiplier. It's actually quite strong, and switching from Black Swan to Hysilens is a huge upgrade, almost 70% better and an equally massive 15,000 DPAV increase, definitely putting DOT back into the meta. At this level, DOT is around most of the 3.x units, and it also helps the team is very good at dealing with many different types of scenarios as well. They have pretty good single target due to Kafka's follow-ups, and really strong AoE damage due to Kafka and Hysilens ultimate. Hence, I think as of 3.5, Hysilens and DOT is easily tier 0.5, and can go up to tier 0 in certain content as well. However, like I said, Hysilens doesn't improve any of DOT's major downsides, and I'm worried that given enough time, we eventually run into the same problem as before, because Hysilens multipliers may no longer be high enough to negate the issues that they have. I am personally hoping that there is still a good chance we get a new DOT unit that could maybe touch on these issues, or maybe even get reworks to past kits like maybe Black Swan. But for now, let's focus on how to build Hysilens properly. Firstly, for build goals, we want to aim for 120% effect hit rate because this gives Hysilens the full 90% damage boost. Any more than this is not necessary as most of the debuffs have a 100% base chance to apply. But 3 to 4000 attack pre-battle is also really good, and for speed tuning it's 128.43 or 134. This is because having higher speed on Hysilens doesn't really contribute much. She doesn't really do much with faster turns other than building to her ultimate quicker. She can't detonate DOTs like Kafka can. And she also has some energy issues that prevents her from spamming her ultimate as fast as Kafka, hence why I don't think it's ever worth building higher speed. 134 guarantees 2 turns in 1 cycle, and 128.43 also gives her 2 turns in 150 action value or 1 cycle if she has her S1, because it gives a 10% speed boost if you attack enemies with the debuff that he applies. Once again, I don't recommend going higher than this after 120% effective rate and the respective speed break points go all into attack percentage subsets. Hence, for Relic Builds, attack or effective rate body, this depends on your light cone, almost always attack boots. Hysilens has inbuilt 14 speed, so it's quite easy to hit breakpoints even without speed boots. Physical or damage orb is the interesting one, because like I said, her other duties do not benefit from a physical damage orb, which is why the difference is quite small, ranging from 2 to 4%, but physical damage orb still comes out on top. Finally, I was considering an ERR robe at first, but in testing and gameplay, I almost never had issues with her ultimate. In fact, there were times I could use her ultimate way before her zone expired, hence I believe attack percentage robe to just be the better choice in general. Now for light cones, her signature is the best in slot. It gives 40% effective rate, allowing you to run attack body and applies an additional special debuff whenever she applies a debuff. This will happen constantly since all she needs is an ally to attack to apply a DOT. This debuff increases the DOT vulnerability up to 30% at 6 stacks and also gives a 10% speed boost to the attacker, and is why she can run 128.43 speed with her S1. This can also help with some speed tuning. For example, 167 Eagle Kafka is quite hard to hit, right? This can help you hit those breakpoints. The next best light cone is Reforged Remembrance because it gives attack percentage and defense ignore based on the different types of duties applied, and Hysilens is very easily able to achieve that, so it's quite strong for her. Those Many Springs is a really strong light cone as well due to the extra general vulnerability, which can be extra useful if you're using Robin or Tribi, but the very low base chance can make it more inconsistent, as Hysilens is usually played slower than Telltale and also has a lower effective rate. Like I said, there's not much incentive for Hysilens to be faster, hence can reduce the effectiveness of the vulnerability in gameplay. Patience is all you need is actually decent for Hysilens. This is because she doesn't reach the maximum 8 physical DOTs even in triple DOT teams, hence instead of a 60% DOT, it's an additional 80% physical DOT on top of that, unless you have her E1 already. Then it will unfortunately be quite useless. Showtime S5 is the best free-to-play light cone, as Hysilens applies debuffs constantly and easily has over 80% effective rate, so she has the full 30% damage and 36% attack boost. Goodnight Seatbelt S5 is also really strong, as the huge damage boost can apply to DOT as well. The new Meta Pass light cone at S5 is kind of just the worst version of Telltale's signature and isn't very good unfortunately. Eyes of the Prey, even with the huge effective rate and DOT boost, still performed the worst by about 20% or 7000 DPEV. Just so that we're clear, 7000 DPV is a lot, even if 20% looks small. Now for team building, Kafka is obviously an absolute must. It goes without saying, but Kafka detonates DOTs very frequently and activates Hysilens DOT from the zone. Without it, Hysilens will not really do much damage, and she is extremely dependent on Kafka, just like all the other DOT units. From there, Black Swan, Robin, Runmei, and Tribi are all really good third slots. I don't have Tribi here because this is considered injury targets and I don't really have time to calculate everything. But Robin performed the best as a dual duty team, followed by Runmei and then Black Swan. I believe Tribi is much better in 5 target scenarios like Pure Fiction due to her DDD spam and should be the go-to there. Runmei can be pretty good but is still worse than Robin. If however you are able to get physical break from Hysilens very consistently, Runmei can technically still perform better, but it's obviously not as strong if enemies don't have the corresponding weakness, so it's quite content dependent. For sustains, I really liked Gallagher because he's a skill point machine and makes it super easy for even Hysilens to use her skill more often. Poho can still be played but can make things a bit awkward at times, especially if you're using Robin or Tribi because you don't really have skill points. Runmei should have no problem though, especially with her S1. Cypher and Silverwolf are also pretty good amplifiers, but it also means your entire team suffers from your debuffs being removed by bosses, so I'm not really sure if you want that. And finally, other duty units are quite weak. Even Black Swan herself is really worse than the other Harmony units, so I don't really recommend them unless you have no other choice, which is why I recommend double duty teams with a support and a sustain for the most comfortable option. Obviously, sustainers teams should do the best, but can be quite hard to run. Finally, for extra vertical investment, Hysilens Eidolons are actually really good. E1 is one of the best Eidolons because he applies a secondary duty that is identical and can coexist at the same time as the other duties from her talent, allowing her to reach the 8 maximum physical duties from ultimate very easily. This also means more duties to detonate and is quite a huge boost in damage. This is better than her S1 because her other light cone options are already pretty good, hence why I recommend E1 over S1, especially in double duty teams. E2 applies her 90% damage boost to herself to the rest of the team when her zone is active, so pretty much permanently. Unfortunately, damage boost is quite oversaturated in a duty team, so even a 90% damage boost doesn't really result in a lot of extra damage. E4 reduces the all-type rest of enemies by 20%, so sort of like Robin E1, and is really strong because it's an extra multiplier. If you have Runmei, Tribi, Black Swan E1 or Robin E1, this will be slightly weaker but still a good Eidolon. E6 increases the max physical duty from ultimate to 12 and increases the damage multiplier from 80 to 100%. This rewards triple duty more than double duty but is still a really disgusting Eidolon even in a double duty team, putting her damage at 96,000 damage per action value. It is one of the highest ceilings I've seen in the game so far, so if you're getting E6, that's great news. That's pretty much it for my Hysilens guide and review. I'll have a video showcasing her in different endgame content soon, so don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thanks for watching.